Tom's speech today is his final speech in his quest for the gold. He still needs to wrap up the success program, but this will be his 10th speech for his Advanced Communicator Gold. This morning, Tom will be doing the 5 to 7 minute speech from project number 3 in the Entertaining Speaker Manual, Make Them Laugh. We've all had at least one. Most of us have had several. Some are more memorable than others, but when they happen, we all wish they hadn't. Please welcome Tom Mahoney as he tells us about the OSM. Tom Mahoney.
I suspect that after that introduction, at least a few of you are wondering, OSM? What in the world is that? I know Tony knows. The OSM, that fleeting instant when you wish that you could turn back the clock about 10 seconds so that you wouldn't do that very stupid thing that you just did. You've all had it, right? The OSM, the oh shoot moment. Yeah, you may translate that if you want. I'm going to tell you about mine in a moment, but bear with me while I set the stage. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. The year is 1972. I am in the Pennsylvania State Police Academy, and our class is in the middle of nowhere, learning about controlling civil disobedience. Civil disobedience. That is a politically correct term for right control. We have learned about the moving wedge formation down the street. We have learned about the riot control shuffle with the riot baton, stabbing anybody who is foolish enough to be in the way. The instructor informs us that occasionally it may be necessary to lob a tear gas grenade to help disperse the crowd. Whereupon he casually lobs a tear gas grenade slightly upwind of our V-shaped formation. Do you know how quickly a perfectly formed V-shaped formation of organized cops can turn into a bunch of crying, coughing, scattering in every direction bunch of cops? No, that's not the OSM moment. 3 weeks later, we're at the firing range. And toward the end of the day, we have collectively fired several thousand rounds of ammunition at human-shaped targets. The instructor happens to be a grizzled old state police sergeant who informs us that since we fell apart so badly at riot control, we're going to try this again. And he takes another tear gas grenade and he throws it slightly upwind of the firing line. Do you think that took some nerve, given that we're all standing there with weapons? Nothing happened. That's right. That tear gas grenade was a dud. Of course, we had another one, but we won't discuss that. Now, I'm the kind of guy who likes to collect trinkets and little souvenirs, and I decided how cool would it be to take that dud tear gas grenade home. And so, at the end of the day, I picked up the canister, I picked up the fuse actuator, I picked up the pin, I put it all back together, and I tossed it in my car. That puppy lived in my house for several years. And every once in a while, a bunch of my cop friends would come over to the house, and we'd sit on the back deck, and we'd have a couple beers, and occasionally, out came the tear gas grenade. And we had some fun with it, with some beer-induced giggling. Now, my first wife did not have a sense of humor about this. Usually, when the tear gas grenade came out, she would find an excuse to go back into the house, but not before giving me a look that would kill a lesser man. This went on for a few years. And one day, my wife informed me that it had to go. Now, by now, you know three things. Number one, I have grown somewhat immune to the whole concept of tear gas grenades. Number two, my wife doesn't like having it in the house. And number three, I've kind of developed this strange attachment to this man toy. But I agreed to get rid of it. So the next night, I carried it out to the trash. Well, you may not believe this, given all the fun games that we had with this tear gas grenade, but I do have a little bit of safety consciousness inside of me. And so I decided the best thing to do would be to pull this thing apart and totally disable it before I threw it in the trash. So I pulled the pin and I let the actuator fly. That fleeting instant when you wish that you could turn back the clock about 5 seconds so you hadn't done that very stupid thing that you just did. My OSM. It happened somewhere between and the tear gas rolling out of the grenade. That OSM happened to last a little longer than some of them. It lasted long enough for me to hear all the windows in the neighborhood slamming shut. And it lasted long enough for me to see the expression on my wife's face as she slammed the living room window. And unfortunately, that OSM came back to me a few minutes later when I realized that someone in the neighborhood had called the police and the state police cruiser rolled in the driveway. I'm happy to inform you that I knew that state trooper. Unfortunately, to this day, he has never let me forget that OSM.
Good job, Tom. I understand the concept of OSM, I just don't understand the concept of it in the singular.